If you enjoyed this clip, make sure to subscribe to my second channel for more live stream clips and debates. And don't forget to join my new Discord server by clicking the link down below.
I'll listen to you. Like, I basically came in from, like, I found out who you were from Tim Pool's stream. I watched him, you know. What do you mean, oh, God?
I didn't do very good on that, so
Well, I'm not saying that you did good or you did bad.
Well, I can understand why you might not be too, you might not like me so much if that was your first impression of me.
Bro, it's just like the data and the things that you cite a lot of the time, like it doesn't seem like that stuff is actually legitimate. Like it doesn't seem like a lot of the data and the things that you present a lot of the time, you're ignorant to the other things that are, you know, also with the same analyzation. You know what I'm saying? Like all the things that factor into the stuff that you're talking about on a lot of different topics, you're overlooking a lot of things. And it's like you refuse to acknowledge certain things.
Like,
bro, dude, like I'd have to start diving into different...
Oh, no. Don't do that. Don't do that. You told me in chat you wanted to rip my esophagus out. Don't come in here.
So what do you want to talk about?
That's what I'm asking you. You're making some broad claims here, and then when I ask for a single example, you don't even have one?
Bro, like your issues on trans and like LGBTQ. Like, bro, how is the shit that like you say make any fucking sense?
Well, I'd be happy to explain it to you, I guess.
That's what I'm saying. If you're willing to teach me something, teach me something. I'm willing to change my mind. Like that if you present me with some information that is legitimate, that
okay, sure. Well, hit me up. What
exactly
change my
mind, I'm willing to do that.
So what exactly do you have contention in? Are you like a Tim Pool fan?
I mean, yeah, I'd say so. I consider myself kind of a centrist like he does. I like to analyze things and pick apart different issues and research them myself and kind of come up with my own opinions on things.
So what kind of research have you done on like the trans issues?
Like, I guess specifically that, okay, like, for example, like you say that, I can't remember exactly how you put it because like I'm on the spot right now. I was just watching your one video on like you did like the toucan sexuals or whatever and shit like that, and you would go out there and say that like there's, you know, more than these amount of genders and like the sexuality, you know, and that shit like doesn't mix. But in my mind, like, dude, like how can you sit there and say that, you know, gender and sex don't, like, I understand how you can say it in a way.
Are you, just to be clear, I recognize 100% that sex and gender correlate. They do. They absolutely do.
Okay.
But just if they correlate doesn't mean that that's like a prescriptive necessity.
Like, it just seems naive to me and kind of ignorant. Like how you talk and you cite all these data points or whatever that, you know, may back up what the narrative that you're trying to push, saying that like, you know, me walking down the street, like, dude, when we were born, when, you know, we came out of the womb, we're either one of two different things. We're either male or we're female. And looking at somebody walking down the street, there are characteristics that obviously point out to tell whether or not a person is male or female.
Sure, there are some sexual characteristics, but there are also a lot of gendered characteristics, and also there are sometimes
gender characteristics.
Sure, so those would be something. Those would be any kind of characteristic that wasn't based on biology. So that would be like women wearing dresses, men wearing suits. And also there can be some overlap too in some kind of like in some of that, like in the sexual characteristics, like men can actually have an issue where they like develop breast tissue and have boobs. But like if you saw that person walking down the street, you wouldn't necessarily assume that that was a woman, because it's not just this one characteristic. It's usually like a mix of multiple things on how we sort of like deduct that that person is, you know, man or woman.
Okay. So at the same time, though, those seem like just outliers. Like that could, there obviously has to be some kind of medical or, diagnosis for something or a disorder that that person has.
And
Or,
there often is. Like, have you heard of gender dysphoria?
well, yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like this is like some form of like mental illness. Like
Well,
that
trans
is
people
what,
who have discomfort with their body do oftentimes suffer from a mental illness called gender dysphoria.
yeah. And like, that's what wraps into like this whole issue is like, how is it fair for them to like make us like other people conform like our speech and the way that we talk and certain things to
I mean, you
portray.
already conform. You're using like dramatic words, but you already conform your speech to what people want. If I told you, like, if you went up to, well, no, if you went up to someone and you were like, "Hey, what's your name?" and they were like, "My name's Jane," you wouldn't be like, "Okay, yeah, let me see your birth certificate." Like you're conforming your speech to what they want,
Okay, like
to
I
how they want to be
understand. I'm
referred.
talking like more in like a social aspect, I guess. Like if you're coming up to somebody and you don't know like what they're, you say you're just walking to somebody on the street and you just, you're not trying to be ignorant, you're not trying to be mean, but
Hmm.
you say, "Oh, hey, how's it going? What's up, dude?" And you don't know that it's they identify as a woman or whatever,
Well,
then
that's kind of a
you're
straw man.
automatically
Is
offending them.
That's kind of a straw man. Usually, trans people are trying to identify I'm sorry, present as the gender that they identify as. So, if you were walking down the street and you saw somebody in a dress with long hair and maybe like boobs, you would probably say, "How's it going, ma'am?" Whether you saw their chromosomes or their vagina or their penis or whatever.
I mean, yeah, I
Like
guess
it's
like I
even the
understand.
medical recommendation
Like yeah, like
is
if I
that
saw
you
Blair,
socially, like for people struggling with gender dysphoria, the medical recommendation is to socially transition to better present as the gender you identify as. So
okay,
this is
like
kind of like a straw man in and of itself, that there's going to be like some burly dude walking down the street and then you're like, "Hey man, how's it going, bro?" and he's like, "I'm a woman," and then like pounds you into
but
the
there is
concrete.
though. Like there literally is like I run into that on TikTok like every single day. Like it's almost every other
Are you
video that
really
like
going to
I'm
use TikTok as an
well,
example to form it? Come on, man.
Like
You
I'm just
told, but
saying that
you
I
told
see
me
that.
that you had a problem with me using studies, and now you're citing like you see stuff on TikTok. Come on,
What no, I'm just saying that it's like a generalization. Like it's out there. I see it. Like
anything's out there. I can point,
yeah.
like I can point to anything out there. Like there's a fuck ton of people in the world, and we have the internet where we can see any kind of crazy outlier we ever want to see. But that doesn't really speak to anything.
Okay. Like I mean I guess I understand that, but
So I
there
don't
was something
understand what your
else.
contention is. Like the sex and gender is different, and you kind of already, like whether you want to admit it or not, you already recognize that, man. Like when you walk into a grocery store, you determine who is a man or a woman to you based on how they present, based on how they talk, based on how they're like acting or behaving on various different ways and various different characteristics. You don't look at their biology.
Yeah, I understand that. But like so what you're saying that like it I guess I'm not like seeing like where it's lining up
I'm not seeing where you have a
because
disagreement.
like because like dude it's basically like okay like we are men and we are women like and
Okay, so what's a woman?
dude
Tell
there's
me.
not more like I'm saying that there's like how can there be like all these other things that they're trying to identify as like that's what I'm saying like
I think it's actually
where
that
do
you
they
don't understand this. You don't understand that
Okay, maybe I
Gender,
don't.
you don't
Maybe I
understand
don't.
that gender being a socially constructed form of identification is separate from sex. Like
So,
there
so
is a
okay, so
broader
they're saying,
conglomeration of how people
okay, okay.
identify.
So let me ask you one thing then. Okay, so if they're saying like, okay, I identify as this, whatever it is, like could you can identify as anything. Like that's like
No,
saying
you
I
can't.
identify as my name, or I identify as.
Well,
So
you
what
some
can you
things are
identify?
socially
What makes
construct.
the identification like? What makes that socially constructed identification? You know, is something that you
Yeah,
can use and something that you can't.
right. So socially constructed identification. We already have that kind of in society. We have names. We have even religions. People oftentimes identify with religion. And, it's really interesting to make this comparison. Are you religious yourself by any chance?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I would consider myself like, I'm pretty religious, I guess, in a way.
Are
Like,
you like a
I believe in,
Christian?
like, I've always kind of considered myself a Christian, growing up, but I'm not like,
Okay,
I
so
don't really
prove
go
it.
to church. And, what do you mean,
So
prove it?
exactly. Like, what if someone were to come up to you and just say, like, prove it?
Well, I mean, I
It's
guess it's one of
part of
those
your
things that
identity. It's
just
part of
it's
who
in
you
my
are. And
heart, yeah.
maybe not so much for you, but like I have
So it has to be accepted. So you're saying like in order for it to be socially constructed and it to be, a thing that is, that will exist, we all have to socially accept it for what it is.
I mean, think about how it works right now with religion. Okay, so hold on. I'm going to try to pull up this thing here because I have a really interesting article that talks about how religion plays a really big role for some people hold on. Here we go.
How it plays into like their belief on.
Their social identity. So I have an article here that talks about how like religion for some people plays a significant role in how they like identify themselves. And growing up with parents who were really Christian, I personally can relate to this. So right now, we recognize a form of identification. People can identify with certain religions. It has no biological basis, yet people could say, "Hey, I'm a Christian." And then maybe tomorrow they say, "You know what? I think I'm actually a Muslim." You have no way of knowing for sure. Now
Yeah.
they might try to express the fact that they're a Muslim. Maybe they're starting to like pray 6 times a day or whatever. Or like they're trying to like express the fact that they are now part of that religion, but like that's not based on biology. People can
Yeah.
people can identify with that religion if you want to put it that way. I know this isn't a one-to-one comparison, but I
Yeah,
think it
like I
gives you a good
understand
insight
what you're
because
saying though.
it's also protected under the law. So it's also
Yeah.
protected when it comes to like you can't discriminate on that basis, even though like I don't have any way to know if you're really a Christian or not. I mean, you
Yeah,
just
I
said
mean,
yourself you haven't gone to church
I
in a long
kind of
time, but that doesn't
understand.
necessarily mean you're not a Christian.
Yeah, and like I guess like to make another reference to kind of make sure that I'm understanding what you're saying is like, okay, so like how Jewish people would present with a sometimes they wear that hat, they're identifying that, but they're portraying it as they want to be portrayed, like they want people to know that they're Jewish or that's their beliefs or whatever, so they wear the hat or they act a certain way to portray that.
Right.
And I mean it's not like you would have to, but it
Right.
would
It's
just be
just
a
like
better
exactly
way
like there's
to
some
express that.
sure. So although gender is not a one-to-one comparison, gender being a set of characteristics and behaviors that we've socially constructed and have more or less decided and assigned that people with penises will have this set of behaviors and expectations, and then people with vaginas will have this set of behaviors and expectations. Now, of course, it's not that straight simple. This happens over a long period of time or whatever. But yeah, like since it is a socially constructed identity, it's a form of like it's a way that you can express yourself and something you can identify with. Like you can identify with the fact that you're a man, or you can identify with the fact that you're a woman. And that's yeah, that's that. That's gender. You can
Yeah.
identify with it. It's socially constructed. And just to be clear, a lot of the times people think that social construct means that this thing isn't real.
like that's kind of where I guess I was coming from. Like that's I was just thinking it's like it's all a complete like hypothetical. Like it's all like a what if.
Well,
But I
a
guess
social
if you have that
construct,
idea, then it would be, religion would be a what if. Your name, everything almost that would be
everything, right?
socially.
Like exactly. I think you're getting it. Yeah, it's like socially constructed. A really easy way to think about it is just would it exist if humans didn't exist? So, for example, money. Now, there is a physical, real piece of paper, but that's all it is. Actually, is
Yeah,
just
but it's
paper.
all like
We've
the
socially decided, hey,
worth.
this piece of paper is worth $20, or this piece of paper is worth this. Like that's a social construct, but it doesn't mean that money isn't real, and it also doesn't mean that you can like identify with money. Like
Money.
not
Yeah.
every
Okay.
social construct is an identification.
Okay. Yeah. So I understand that. So like, how do you feel like on the same issue, like with the trans and LGBTQ, all that, like, and that playing into like things that are socially constructed by us, like sports and restrooms and things like that. Like,
Right.
how does
How does that kind of play into
those are
this?
yeah, like those are the things that almost steer my belief one way or the other. It kind of determines how I feel on certain things sometimes because of how we've been socially constructed as a society in the way that society functions in certain ways. It's we accept that to be normal, but like I understand that if things change or whatever else, that can be accepted as the new normal. So
Yeah,
like
and the thing is so there these are like a very wide range of issues you're talking about here, right? So like
yeah,
sports, for example, that's a really nuanced one that even I would tell you that like there of course is there are biological differences between males and females. Now, we still like if you think about it right now that we kind of have sort of understand social constructs, like
yeah,
we can even the categories are technically socially constructed, right? So we have decided, hey, people with this set of chromosomes and testosterone and a penis are male. Like even that technically is socially constructed, but for the most part, it kind of, it kind of applies there.
I mean,
But
I yeah, I
there are
understand what you're saying.
right, but there are obviously differences between like males and females. So when it comes to sports, I don't think there's a problem with recognizing that. I think that there's a lot of nuance there too. There, for example, been studies that show that sometimes trans people do still retain their strength after going on hormones. But a usual good solution to that, right, is what you do is essentially when trans people are transitioning and if they go on hormones, right, then usually that weakens their bone structure and
Yeah, the
everything else,
bone
and
mass and like muscles. Yeah,
right, and it actually puts them more in line with their cisgender counterparts. Now, there have been studies though, like what I just said, that have shown that like sometimes even after a year to 2 years of being on hormone replacement therapy, trans women, so biological males, but people who identify as women,
yeah.
they still retain some of their strength. That isn't also necessarily a bad thing. They might just have to be on hormones a little longer. So because testosterone, like that hormone, is much more of an accelerant, so it can kick in quickly and then it takes a lot longer to reduce. Um,
Okay.
but a fun kind of fact there is also that, like, I don't know if you knew this, but the Olympics has allowed trans people who have been on hormones, I think for 2 to 3 years, to compete in the Olympics since 2004. And since then, there's never been a trans person in the Olympics.
Huh. I want. Why is that?
That because they're not like they're not really like dominating sports in every like
Yeah,
aspect or
like
whatever.
that's what I was assuming, kind of like that. Like that's kind of the opinion that I've had is like that in a way. Some of them know that they have like an advantage on like like a lot of these like track sports that running, especially like these endurance runs or whatever that they're doing. A lot of them are just blowing them out of the water because they know that they have more lung capacity, but it all depends on whatever time, I
Right.
guess, like how
And
long the
also
process that they are.
it's also like that. I don't even really get into the trans sports that much because I recognize that it's such a radically nuanced thing. Like like how the differences, the biological differences between males and females are so unique. It's so much more complicated than like penis and
Yeah.
vagina, testosterone, estrogen, or whatever. So I usually I don't really even get into this conversation that much, mainly because even like it is kind of aside the point, right? Like it doesn't necessarily mean that trans people aren't valid with their identity or that
Yeah,
they
and
aren't.
that's kind of the catch 22, like when you start diving into that issue, and you start to draw those lines, whether, I would kind of, I would say that I would probably lean more towards like, what you were just describing, like with what the Olympics had done. Like if we were going to, move on and be able to accept that, trans athletes can play in some, like different sports, but like where do you draw the line? It becomes like one of those things where, you're not wanting to hurt people's feelings, but, facts don't really care about your feelings.
But that's the thing is it
Like,
doesn't. It's like they can still be valid in their identity while also
yeah.
still having maybe like a biological difference. Like think about how like there are like tall women and short women. They're both
So
women.
like,
They can be different biologically on some level, but it doesn't mean that they're not women.
yeah, but like I'm saying, like if we're willing to accept, like their social construction of like their identity and all this, like I think they should be able to accept that you know them being able to live who they are, but really and being happy with the transformation or wherever they're going through, what point they get in their lives. They have to be willing to accept that like how they were born as well. And
But they do usually, like that's why
yeah,
like trans people that go on to transition, like that's why they have gender dysphoria, is because they recognize that their body is so radically different from their
their
identity,
mind.
and it brings them such like crippling discomfort and depression. That's why you see like higher suicide rates with trans people and everything else. And then
Yeah,
you
like
add that on top of like social stigma and discrimination that they're like disproportionately victimized by, and it's a whole
yeah, and
mess.
that's why they have such like high suicide rate.
Right. And
But
also, just a really quick thing too, when it comes to the bathroom thing. So like, since the sports, well, you know what? Let's wait actually to get into the bathroom thing. Go ahead. Go ahead.
well,
We'll stay on sports for another second.
I mean, I was just gonna essentially say that like they would have to accept being who they are, and changing and still being able to compete. Like if they were born like a male and into a woman, they would still be having, be willing to accept that they would compete in men's sports. But then you get into like them taking the hormones and the treatments and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it would almost like like if they're doing that and they want to turn into like woman or identify as a woman, then that's almost taking away from like their bone mass, all of that stuff that would help them
Right.
in the sport.
It
So
kind of
like,
puts them in line a little bit more. But
yeah,
again, it's sort of like aside the point. Like that's like I said, it's a really nuanced thing. After they go through treatment, they are usually more in line with their cisgender counterparts. But like even if they're not, that might be something that like can be addressed, but it doesn't need to be addressed via trans people are bad and a menace to girls and they're going to ruin sports. Like, let's look at this from a rational perspective and be like, okay, like, I mean, for example, I don't remember where she is, but a lot of people bring this athlete up because she's a woman, but she has, I'm not sure if it's like a disorder or if it's just like I don't know, but she has like uniquely large amount of testosterone. So,
okay,
but
I
she's
think
a
I might have
woman.
heard.
Yeah, you probably heard of her before. She's a
Yeah,
woman. So with the sports, they were kind of like, what do we do here? Because, right? So she ended up going, I think she went on something that lowered her testosterone,
yeah, huh,
which is like what trans people would be doing too.
yeah, exactly. So it would almost be similar, but I'd have to look more up about it to
But
know for sure. But
do you at very least recognize that like even if the sports thing is like being as nuanced and complicated as it is doesn't really take away from like the validity of trans people?
I definitely agree with you on that. Like, it doesn't mean that they would be any less valid, but like, I think they need to have like some sort of rationale with them as well to like be able to meet in the middle, you know, to like understand that, like, yeah, like, okay, like
And
this
I
is
mean,
who
I
I've
would,
decided to be, I have these issues that, I myself have to deal with. Everybody else has their
but I
issues,
think that you'd be surprised because I think most trans people are very, very aware of that. I would recommend
I'm
checking out
sure.
an
Yeah, I'm
interview I
sure.
did with Janae Marie Kroc. She's a transgender athlete, and she was a bodybuilder when she still was a man, and now she's a woman, but she is massive. I mean, insane. Um,
Huh.
and we had a really good conversation, and she recognizes that, and she said she's not going to be competing against women. She's still only competing against men.
Yeah, like, see, like that is where I feel like, it should be met in the middle. Like, that
So
would
it
be,
seems right, but like it seems like that's kind of what's happening, right?
hopefully. I mean, I guess we'll see.
And then as far as it goes with the bathroom thing, I used to be one of those people too that was like really scared of that. But I don't know. Here's a really interesting study. Um let's see. So data comes from public record requests of criminal incident reports. This study finds that the passage of hold on. So this study looked at what happened when states implemented what they call non-discrimination laws in public accommodations. And this was evidence regarding safety and privacy in public restrooms. And they even went into locker rooms and changing rooms with this. This study analyzed this as well. And basically, the study concluded this study finds that the passage of such laws is not related to the number or frequency of criminal incidences in these spaces. Additionally, the study finds the reports of privacy and safety violations in public restrooms, locker rooms, and changing rooms are exceedingly rare. This study provides evidence that fears of increased safety and privacy violations as a result of non-discrimination laws are not empirically grounded.
Okay, so like, dumb that down for me a little bit. So they're basically saying like
They're
the
saying that
the
they're saying they passed these laws, and then despite the fact that these laws were passed, which basically said, hey, trans people, you can use the bathroom that matches your gender identity.
yeah,
um,
yeah.
and so they looked at those states. I'm not sure how long they analyzed it. They give the methodology and stuff down here, I think.
Okay.
And then they found that despite these laws being passed, there was not any increase in like safety violations or people complaining or any kind of like criminal complaints.
Yeah, that's what I assumed. Yeah. So like, yeah, no matter, half of the people honestly probably wouldn't even realize, unless they felt like, some kind of uncomfort standing beside somebody, in the bathroom or whatever else. But like a lot of the time, you know, you don't even see that stuff. It's in and out, whatever, and people don't even really pay attention. Like,
Yeah.
that's where, like, I don't really have a problem with that. It doesn't really bother me. Like, I just think, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Get in, get out, see you later. It doesn't bother me really.
I gotta
But
say, I think you're starting to get it, Rob. I'm proud of you,
uh,
man.
for sure, dude. Like that, dude. Like, I was just trying to get your attention, man, and like, I like doing the debates and actually coming on and like having real discussion with somebody that actually knows what they're talking about. Because like, I'll be the first one to admit, dude. Like, you know, dude. Okay, first of all, if you can't tell, like, I stutter on my words and shit every once in a while, and like,
That's all right.
I'm not like my memory isn't like as good as it once was. Like, I've been like 2.5 years like sober now, but I was into doing some stuff that I shouldn't have been doing when I
I
was
got you.
younger, and yeah, so
Yeah.
trying to retain my memory and get things back, and having debates and actual real conversations, it keeps my mind going and thinking,
Yeah.
kickstarts me so I can keep my mind fresh and on point.
Yeah.
But
I definitely understand that, and I'm glad that we were able to have this discussion. One other thing I wanted to add really quickly, just I should have mentioned this earlier with this study about the gender bathrooms.
yeah.
It actually is the opposite. So usually when trans people are forced to go into the wrong bathroom, they're more likely to be victimized and be victims of assault, rather than being perpetrators.
You're saying that like they're more likely to go into, like, you know, if you're a man identifying as a woman and you go in the woman's bathroom, you're more, you know, likely to get victimized in that bathroom than you victimizing somebody else.
Right. Well, yeah. If trans people are forced to go into the bathroom that doesn't correspond with their gender identity, yeah, they're more likely to be victimized.
There's a lot of assholes out there that, you know, aren't really open-minded and, you know, willing to have a conversation. Or
it goes worse than that. You know, for a long time, like in court, a valid way to like defend yourself in court was like the gay panic defense. And it was like,
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like people would like get mad if it was like if they found out it was like a trans woman, and then they would like kill them and be able to argue like in court that, oh, I was gay panic defense. It was insane. Like the kind of discrimination that the members of the LGBT community endure, it's really, really rough. And that's why it's, you know, it's so important. I'm really glad that we were able to have like a good faith discussion, because I feel like, I don't know, I think that, I think you're getting it.
For sure, man. Like, I'm trying, dude. Like, there's just, I wish I could, like, off the top of my head, be able to actually talk to you about, like, some other issues that, like, I know that I might disagree with you on or whatever else, because, like, yeah, I mean, it is, you know, it's nice having somebody to talk to, you know, and debate about things, to somebody that I can actually listen to that might change my mind, you know?
Yeah, man.
Because there's things that, like, I've heard you and, you know, Tim, Steven, Crowder talk about, and, you know, like gun issues and things like that. Like, in my opinion, I think everybody should be able to have a gun, you know?
Yeah.
But, like, well, I'm not sure what your stances are and things like that. Well, I mean, I guess not, you know, I wouldn't say absolutely everyone, you know, there should be some slight restrictions, but as far as things are now, like, I like, it's a lot more difficult to get a gun than people realize. Yeah. But I think that our gun laws are a little bit strict on things.
Well, that might be a conversation for another time. I do appreciate you coming on, Rob.
Yeah, dude, for sure, man.
All right, have a good rest of your night.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time, man. Thanks. Peace.
Peace. Do you think we did it? Do you think we're starting to base pill Rob over here?